So is Reno becoming unaffordable? Today we're going to talk about the truth about housing, rent, and real wages here in Northern Nevada. And just so you know, you used to be able to buy a house here in Reno for under $200,000, and now that might get you a 2-bedroom condo with no yard and a view of a parking lot with an HOA fee that you just can't explain what it even does. So has Reno changed? Absolutely, and it's changed fast. And the big question a lot of people are asking, especially locals who live here, is the city still affordable? Or is it slowly turning into the next Boulder, Bend, or even Boise, Idaho? So today we're going to unpack the truth about housing prices, rent, wages, and what it all means for people trying to live here and move here from other areas. So today, as always, we have Sydney Lessinger on. We're going to talk about this because we're meeting with lots of clients talking about this exact thing, and housing affordability, as we talked about it in the past, is people's number one concern many times. And so let's talk about then versus now. And I know we joke about it. I'm going to talk about then. I'm going to look right in your eyes because City doesn't know about back then. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Back in 2012, and I'm even going to go back even further to the first home I bought here in Northern Nevada back in the mid 1990s, I was able to buy a 1,210 square foot home for $106,000. Now, it had no air conditioning. It had no front or backyard landscaping. It had no fancy upgrades. It didn't have a whole lot of anything, but it was still under $100 a square foot. And my income at the time was a whopping $26,000, which felt like a lot of money. But between the two of us, if we were making 50 grand and our house payment was $800, it wasn't bad. But let's go back to a more reasonable time frame, okay? So we're going to go back to 2012. This is kind of right after the Great Recession, 07, 08, when things went to hell. We were still recovering from a housing crash. The market here was not good. And you could still find a decent home in the Old Northwest or Stead, and you could still be under $200,000, even, $175,000. Rent for a 2-bedroom apartment was roughly $1,000, and there were jobs. Income still hadn't risen really well, and it still hasn't to this day, but because home prices were still relatively affordable, and as we talk about, your big 3 expenses, housing, transportation, and food, if housing was still affordable, that was the big one. We were just looking at my budget yesterday, just as trying to show my daughter how this thing would work moving forward, and even now, my housing expense is still roughly 35% of my income, at least for my budget, not of my income, but of my budget. And so we're going to talk about that. Now, if we talk about now, here's where Sydney can jump in because you're working with clients. What are you seeing more that's happening currently versus what used to happen back in the day?
The median sales price for homes in Nevada in 2012 was $180,000. Comparative to 2024, which is last year's statistics, we're looking at about $550,000, pushing towards that $600,000 mark. So home prices obviously have increased, and buyer power in terms of purchasing has decreased.
So when we talk about this is where we have these conversations with older people versus people my age versus people more your age. And what they talk about is housing affordability. And the cost of a house versus the income, this is where the big discrepancy has come from, where housing prices have gone up and up and up, and income has not increased at the same rate. So that's been the big issue as far as what's going on then versus now. So what we want to talk about now is the numbers. And we always say the numbers don't lie. We're going to talk about some specific numbers right now about what's really going on as far as housing, rents, and numbers like that. So Sid, let's give them some numbers about what we pulled up in our research. And again, this is strictly for more of the Reno Sparks area, but let's tell people what we found.
2012, the median home price was $180,000 versus now we're pushing towards that $600,000 mark.
Which is over 200% increase.
Yes.
It's a massive increase, and we know wages have not gone up like that.
Yep, it's a big percentage. Rent in 2012, roughly for a 2-bedroom apartment, you're looking at about $950, so roughly $1,000. 2024, you could be anywhere between $1,800 and $2,200 for the same 2-bedroom apartment. That is about an 85 to 100% increase as well. And like you had said, wages have not done that. They have not come up in that particular percentage. The median household income in Northern Nevada is roughly $70,000. That is difficult. And if you're a single income household or that is kind of your budget, it's not going to happen. And especially with the types of jobs and the industries that we have here. Right. If you're a service worker or government worker, or you work at a school teaching, sometimes the affordability of being in Reno does start to become too much. So
it's funny, we have this example that we use all the time. We've been talking about who's getting squeezed the most and where the problems will be coming in. And sometimes it's just an unlucky timing thing. As those of you who have been watching, Sydney is 24 years old. She has a brother that's 28 years old. Lucky for us, we were helping your brother buy a house in 2019. And literally, if Sydney went to try to buy his same house, between the increase in the price, the increase in the interest rate, her payment would be literally almost 3 times what his payment was just 5 or 6 years ago. So this has been the big issue. And most of our younger clients, because we have helped people buy that are younger clients, first-time home buyers, typically they're getting some sort of financial help. So if you're someone who doesn't have that financial help, then you're going to be looking at maybe buying something knowing at minimum you might need 2-3 roommates to be able to afford that house payment, which causes things most. So let's be clear. If you owned a home, like I've owned real estate in Reno for 35 years, it has been great for me as far as, one, it's great for our business. Two, it's great in the fact that my home prices have gone up and up and up. So we have like kind of this dual economy thing going on, where for someone like myself, I've been winning the whole time. And for someone like yourself, who's just trying to get in the game, it makes things a whole lot more difficult. So who are the people that have struggled the most getting into this real estate game with this affordability crisis? And we've got a list of them.
Definitely young buyers, anyone in their kind of early 30s, your 20s as well, trying to purchase a property, whether that's a condo or townhome or a smaller kind of entry-level home. Right. They're not trying to go for anything crazy. They just want a residence for themselves. We also have, again, the service workers, the teachers, and any sort of government workers as well, public service.
I would say people who lived here a long time.
Yeah.
So some people, if they've stayed in their house for a long time, they maybe have built up some equity, but their income hasn't risen. And now they might want to move, but they're stuck in the house that they're in, whether they have a really low interest rate that they can make their payment affordable. Yep. But I know that, like, even my brother in Las Vegas lives in a neighborhood that he couldn't buy a home in the neighborhood he lives in now. He just luckily bought far enough back where he can afford to live in the neighborhood that he is now. So that has been a big issue for people, where they may even want to move. So they might already be a homeowner, but they're stuck with where they are. So if you're someone thinking about buying real estate in Northern Nevada, do me a favor. Click the link in the description below so we can get you a copy of our free buyer's guide that'll help you get started on your journey. The big question is, and I think a lot of people may know the answer to some of these questions, are what is causing it? And I know we've mentioned it briefly in lots of other videos, but what are some of the things you're seeing even in today's right now world? What is causing some of these affordability concerns?
Obviously, our population has increased. I mean, Reno has grown tenfold in the last 10, 15 years or so. I mean, we've had a big spike, especially since COVID. And we also have a lot of people who are coming here for the tech jobs that have come into Reno. They're working remotely, so they're coming with larger salaries than our average here in Reno, coming in, buying the real estate, and then they stay and work remotely.
Well, one of the other big issues is that construction has been very slow. I know, like, between obviously 2005 and 2010, almost nothing got built. Then builders were skittish and scared to start building quickly enough. I know, as you know, your brother works for a construction company. He says the permitting, the zoning process is a pain in the neck. We got 2 clients that are basically bought land that are building homes for themselves, who one of them has built multiple homes here. He said he'll never do it again because the process and the zoning is such a pain in the rear end. And then, of course, just the cost of everything has just got more expensive. So these are some of the problems. Are there things we can do about it? And you and I talked about it, and there's definitely some things that we can do about it. One of the bigger one is, and we're seeing more of this lately, is there are more builders building homes. There is more new construction options. It would be nice to get a lot more lower level inexpensive options. I know Toll Brothers is building lots of homes here, but a lot more of the lower end, lower price, smaller, high density. We're not seeing enough of that. It would be nice to see more of that. Do you see much of that in the new construction?
Not necessarily. There is a Lennar build site where they're building homes, but there is, I believe it's a townhome complex. It might be apartments. I can't quite remember what it was. But that's about the only one I've seen in terms of being able to purchase them. Because obviously I have seen quite a few apartment buildings going up, but in terms of affordable to purchase, we don't have a ton of options going up right now.
Yeah, I'd say the other thing would be nice is, and we used to see in the past more, would be first-time home buyer options as far as loans and financing go. You see some of those programs come and go. They change all the time. This is why it's important to talk to local lenders that might know some of those things. And of course, another one would be increased wages. If there were employers here that would be willing to pay more, increase it, would make that affordability issue a lot better for some of the younger people. Another thing would be more availability of short-term rentals where people could come here and learn the area, rent for 6 months. You almost can't find anything for less than 12 months anymore, and be able to then react quickly when rates have been jumping all around and they could buy something. So we'll just have to see. So what does this mean? We have a couple different groups of people. We want to know what this literally means directly to each one of those groups so that they would know what they need to do to get prepared and know what was going forward. So what would be good to do as a first-time home buyer?
For the first-time home buyers, depending on where you're kind of sitting financially at that point in time, if you have parents that can help you, lovely, great, wonderful. If you don't, potentially waiting and readjusting your time frame might help you a little bit so that you don't feel so pinched for cash.
Yeah.
You can also be open to different areas. Obviously, yes, everybody wants to be close to Reno and close into the city, but there are good options in Sparks, Carson City, Fernley. Dayton's a little bit
further,
far,
yeah.
but if you're based out of Carson City, it might be a good option for you.
Well, and again, even from Dayton, it's only about 45 minutes back to the airport. And if it's someone who's coming from California that's used to hour-long commutes,
Yep.
these are easy drives. I mean, it might be 45 minutes, but it is not high congestion, high traffic, all kinds of things. But there are lots of other areas where you can still find homes that are more affordable. And there's lots of different financing options. So again, we always want to talk about that. If you're a renter, it's a little bit different because you have this time frame as far as when your lease might expire. So you got to time that out well. And ideally, you'll be talking to us 6 months before your lease expires so we can start to get prepared. You can also, we do property management. So a lot of times when our owners go to sell their house, the first thing we want to tell renters is, hey, can you buy the house that you already live in as an option for people? Some can, some cannot. We've had some success with that over the years. And then as tenants in a house, they need to know what their rights are as far as being able to get in or out of a lease, or if the home that they rent goes for sale, how that works as far as what their rights are. We're getting ready to list 2 houses right now that we do the property management on. The renters are still there, and knowing how all that works. So those are more for the local people. A lot of the people that watch this channel are relocating buyers. And what will we say to those relocating buyers, especially if they're not familiar with Reno? Here's something that I think people just aren't aware of. And what are you having conversations about?
Not just assuming Reno's cheap because it isn't California. If you look at Nevada real estate, counting Las Vegas as well, Reno is actually more expensive of the 2 places to be. And we have good options. And depending on what you're looking for in terms of your relocation, Reno has a different neighborhood feel. So we might be able to find you what you're looking for in a price point that you can afford. Might not necessarily be exactly where you thought you were going to be, but we have options.
And I say it all the time. Has it gotten more difficult to be a homeowner here, especially if you're a younger person or a first-time home buyer? Yes. Is it impossible? No. Are we becoming unaffordable? No. It's just becoming more difficult than it ever was before. So for a lot of folks, that if they're starting to feel hopeless, they're not understanding what's going on, your process might be a year or 2 or 3 out. You might need to start talking with friends and people about being roommates, or maybe buying a house with your brother or your sister, or finding ways to get in the real estate game. And if you just live in an area that's so expensive, or you moved to Reno, just so expensive, don't think real estate's not a good wealth building tool. You could always buy investment property in other states. They're a lot more affordable than it is here. So the biggest thing we tell people is reach out to us, have a meeting with us. Let's talk to a lender. And again, then you'll know if you're ready to do something now versus way, further down the road. So any final words as far as what people or what you're having conversations about unaffordability?
I get the first-time home buyers are typically the ones that are the most nervous, but I think once they figure out that they have more options than they maybe would have realized, that they're feeling a lot better about that.
And like we always tell everybody that watches this channel, everybody's situation is unique. So please reach out to us. We're happy to have that conversation and guide you through the process. So if you're someone who's having concerns and questions about affordability here in Northern Nevada, check out this video we did right here about the cost of living in Northern Nevada.